Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cold Reads, episode 21. I am Laura Nicole, your host, and this show is presented by Resonant Audiobook Solutions. So today we are doing Chapter 16, Part 1. And we have with us a lovely crew of actors that I am happy to introduce to you. And we will start with Miss Emilie Gillick. Tell people who you are and what you do.
Hello, I'm Emilie, and I am the co-founder of Circus-13 Productions, and I help out with producing and voice acting.
Fantastic. And Mr. Janra Roberts.
Howdy, howdy.
Who are you, what you do?
I am Janra. I am a program director at Valley Free Radio, and I do two radio programs. One is nerd music called Press Start to Continue, Mondays at 9, and the other one is Civil Politics, which is Fridays at 7. And you can go to planetslide.pro for links to either of those.
Fantastic. And Mr. Ellis.
Hey, how y'all this evening? It's Paul Ellis. I can be found at wirelessadventures.com. I'm an actor, voice actor, and not an actor. I've got a face for radio. And a podcaster and an author, and been knocking about it for a couple of years. Decided to go back to being serious on it this year. So
awesome. Well, thank you all so much for being here. So let's go down my cast of characters and tell y'all who you are going to be. So Emilie, I'm going to have you read the lines highlighted in bright yellow. This is Valina, and Valina is a young centaur female. She has taken up the call, as it were, to aid the Elderwood and to aid the other races of the wood by bringing the injured Beatrix Stonebriar back to the place where the counter curse is being brewed, and also to give her blood freely toward the counter curse. Janra, you will be reprising the role of her brother, Baltier. Very gruff, kind of very protective big brother. I will be playing the part of the Elven Choir because I can. Janra, I'm also going to have you play the gatekeeper of Trolls Hollow. And since you and Paul are both going to be playing trolls this round, I will reiterate that trolls speak very purposefully, and they have two very great tusks coming up from their lower lip. So when you talk, you are going to speak slow, purposefully, and with your lower lip being a bit loose. And so the gatekeeper is in the sandy yellow. And, oh, there's a kitten. There's a kitten in my room. Yay. And then we come to Paul's parts. Paul, you are going to be playing both Goblo, who is the head of the Trolls Alchemist Guild. He's very wizened. He is gentle because he's a mentor, but he also has that very purposeful aspect to his speech with the lazy lower lip. And you will also be reprising your role as Turek. Hey, Emilie, can I ask you to play one more quick role?
Certainly.
There is a role at the end of this episode. It is a role for a naiad, and she is very sweet, very calm, very ethereal, and it's just this one line in light purple at the bottom of page 3.
Okay.
All right. Everybody kind of know what they're doing?
yes, I kind of know.
Okay.
Totally.
Great. Well, I've kind of done a recap, so we'll go ahead and get started once I share the document, as always. And we will go ahead and get started with Chapter 16. The new litter that they had me resting on was soft. It was a fur of some animal, like a fox or rabbit. It was snug enough where I did not bounce, even when Velena jumped over large obstacles. Even though the ointment's scent was soothing, likely to bring on the healing power of sleep, I forced myself to stay awake. That was difficult enough, with my coverings and Velena's natural body heat keeping me blissfully warm. The sharp chill of the coming winter bit at my face, the only exposed part of me. Without it, I would have had no chance against the sleep that wanted to engulf me. I directed the two centaurs throughout the night, and soon dawn began to rise. That's when I realized that something was dreadfully wrong. We paused at a stream for both Baltier and Velena to take a quick rest and some water. On our side of the bank, the evergreens were their rightful color. The remaining leaves on the trees, littered over the ground, were varying shades of bright green, polished gold, and burnt red, fire-crested orange, and earthen browns. The other side of the bank was much different. As Velena took me out of the bandolier, she looked over at the other bank in wonder. She switched the side that the leather rested on, and it had bruised her something fierce along where her neck met her shoulder. She did not complain, but simply worked on reversing the pouch so that it would fit correctly, resting on the opposite shoulder.
Does it always do that?
She asked, staring at the other side of the stream. Does it always look like... I tried to think of a good analogy and was stumped. The fact of the matter was that everything that was supposed to have color, from the foliage on the ground, the curling ferns, the wisteria and ivy, to the remaining leaves on the trees, were a bright, monochromatic fuchsia. The wall of pink was only broken up by the color of the tree bark, dirt, and the sky, which had maintained their natural shades. I noted that the color was starting to creep into the foliage that dammed across the river, where low-hanging branches collected them like a net. No, kiddo, that's not natural,
We should not delay.
said Baltier.
Are you almost done with your adjustments?
There. All set.
She placed me in the bandolier, a little forcefully, but I had just applied another dose of the pain ointment. The additional discomfort passed soon enough. They raced through the wood at lightning speed. It was not nearly as fast as the dust Goblo had put on me to get there. I cursed myself for being so reckless. If I had only watched where I was going, I wouldn't have been late. I could have flown here myself with just a vial of blood, and that would have been it. But now my clumsiness was putting the entire wood and these two children at risk. Granted, they were old enough to make their own decisions, but they had so much more life to live ahead of them. Sorrow, if it could fill anything than a feeling heart, filled the air. Hold, I called. It was loud enough for both Velena and Baltier to comply.
What is it?
Baltier asked. I held up my good hand and tried to hone in on the sound of the wind.
We cannot be far. We should keep moving.
Shut up, I hissed. I'm trying to listen. The stallion stamped his hoof impatiently. My glare must have registered to him, because after a moment it ceased, and both of them were silent, barely breathing. Then I could hear the song. Over the hills, from the direction of the silver bark, the elves had sentenced the girl Alina. In the ancient melodies, they sung out her crime of larceny and betrayal of her people. In golden swaths of amber grain has come to the silver bark, letting go of sense, see what she has wrought. Seeping life from the babes of Fae, with blood to change our ways. Stolen secrets not to stand. Ken did not. Now she is brand. Murderous thief, your cause is pure. Love paved with blood cannot endure. Life has been stolen, so your life must rend. From dawn of this morning until the end. A rhythm followed. It was an incantation of one phrase in the old language. I knew it well. In my history lessons, it had been the chant used at the end of every trial. Justice is law, is the rough translation. The words themselves have a much deeper meaning to those who know it. The chanting got louder and louder. Valina's chest began to rise and fall more heavily, and I could feel the beat of her heart rate increase. All at once, the chanting stopped. I closed my eyes and said a prayer. Great gods that hold our world in balance, help her find the peace she did not know on this earth. Valina wiped her eyes as she understood what had just happened.
Let's go from here.
I nodded. You're right. We're almost there. 5 more miles. Look for the great stones. Look for the great stone gate at the top of the hill to the west. The last 5 miles of a journey always seem to be the longest. Outside of the gate to Troll's Hollow, a thick cauldron was lifted off the ground with a chain, and more than 6 cauldrons hanging beneath it. The bottom of the top black cooking pot was dripping with the same pink color that had coated the rest of the elder wood. Guiding the centaurs to the edge of the gate, I called for the gatekeeper. As I suspected, he waited just under the edge of shadow, leading into the hollow.
Stonebriar of the Watch, you are overdue, and with centaurs in your presence. What has befallen you?
He inquired. I was injured during my flight. The fastest method back was with the assistance of these centaurs who have come to lend aid, but I fear we may be too late. He waved his hand, and the opening between the ruined monoliths flashed a bright blue, then dissipated.
Be welcome then, and let us make haste.
He motioned for the centaurs to enter. They did so with some hesitation. I placed my good hand against Valina's warm skin. Do not be afraid. They have just as much at stake as you and your herd do. We can only help each other. She lifted her chin with something that looked like a mix of purpose and defiance. For a moment, I saw Nomina in her eyes. The clip-clop of centaurs' hooves did not make nearly as much noise as I had anticipated. That was probably due to the renewed bustle of the halls. Goblins, elves, fae, and trolls were in every workstation, putting their heads together, going over charts, and loudly debating the use of one method or another. Satyrs scampered through the hallways, carrying charts or missives. I suppose that they would be the best at avoiding hazardous areas with their goat-like instincts. Finally, we made it to the Well of Light, where all the major commotion was occurring. We walked in just in time to see Goblo's assistant holding a burning torch under the arm of a naiad. She whimpered, but did not scream. As the steam lifted, Turek, who was perched on a ladder, held a half... Wow. As the steam lifted, Turek, who was perched on a ladder, held half of a glass orb and collected it.
That's more than enough. Douse the flame, Marka,
said Goblo. I could feel Velena shiver under me. Placing my hand on her again, I gave her as much reassurance as I could. For you, it will be different. Your blood is easier to get and much more condensed. Turek's keen ears perked after I had spoken, and he turned in my direction.
It's about time you showed up. We were wondering what happened to you.
Got chased by a falcon, flew off a cliff, broke my fingers and dislocated my shoulder, nearly drowned. Any questions?
Nope. But you should get your arm looked at. That's probably not the most comfortable thing in the world.
He looked at Goblo, who nodded.
let's get that looked at for you.
I'm not going anywhere right now. They all looked at me. I was not about to let them have me ushered off and made useless. What are you going to do with Velena? When are you going to use her blood?
If she is willing and ready, we can extract it now.
Goblo's eyebrows quirked at me. Good. I will stay until that is done.
What do you mean?
Turek asked.
You might have internal bleeding, and your bones have been out of place for several hours. We need to...
Turek, I swear if you try to move me, I will break your nose again. I have been dancing with death enough the last couple of weeks that he can wait until he's on my ticket again. Do not touch me. I made a promise to this brave filly and her brother and her mother and all of her herd that I would keep her safe. The goblin raised his hands in surrender.
Okay. I surrender.
He took a few steps backward, and soon he made enough room for Goblo to come forward. The bright metal was silver and engraved as many troll artifacts were. I could hear Baltir's hooves shuffle against mossy stone. Apparently, Goblo noticed the stallion's unease as well.
Fear not, my good centaur. I will only take what is needed and nothing more.
He looked to the open door. Marga had set up a makeshift workshop and was just corking the vial of Naiad essence.
Marka, a new vial and some clean linen, please.
The initiate complied. Velena must have looked terrified. That could have been the only reason for the Naiad to speak.
Do not be afraid, dear one. It will only hurt for a moment.
I felt a drop of water fall on my head. When I looked up, the poor girl had tears creating lines of salt down her face, collecting on her chin, and then dropping on me. It was a little annoying, but she was still a child. We are all here for the same reason, Velena, and this has to be your choice. Blood freely given, isn't that right, Goblo?
It is the only way.
Yay! And that is the end of part 1 for chapter 16. I apparently was having an off night because I was stumbling over everything. And normally when that happens, I would stop and go back to the beginning of the sentence and just push through. But that's kind of the purpose of a cold read, is to kind of get your mouth around the words and the way things are supposed to sound. Did anybody else have anything that they picked up on for themselves or other actors?
I wish I had more time to experiment with the trolls' verbiage and language, and I kept trying to shape my mouth a certain way, and I'm not really sure it pulled off. I'm not happy with it.
Well, you know, and that is another great thing about doing a cold read, is kind of starting to get a feel for it, and having the opportunity to experiment with it is definitely a bonus. I mean, if you're free tomorrow, I can have you on tomorrow to play the same part.
Sure.
All right, cool.
Well, sure, absolutely, yeah.
There, so you can play with it more. Janra, Emilie, anything from you guys?
I always feel like I'm like backstage when I'm waiting for my lines, like prepping myself up. It's weird. Like, one thing about voice acting is that you don't see that hand motion, you don't see that facial motion. You just kind of have to, like, I guess, put that in your voice. So
Right.
mentally preparing myself for 1-2 characters, it's kind of exciting to play something new.
Yeah. I definitely feel you there. Going back and forth between 2 different characters, especially in such quick succession as Paul did, is really interesting, because you have to sometimes even physically change what you're doing to embody that character and get the voice right, which is neat. Paul, how'd you feel about that?
Well, I noticed, well, I said before with the troll, I was trying to square out the bottom of my jaw, which kind of played with my diction just a little bit. But I found that when I was doing the troll part, I was sitting up very straight, but when I was doing the goblin part, I was kind of hunched over. That's it's what you do, I guess, to get into character, even if they can't see you. Mark Hamill, when he was doing the Joker reads, they filmed him doing that so that they could animate over it. So I don't think that the hand motions are necessarily lost on an audience, because a lot of that gets conveyed in the way that you deliver it verbally.
Yeah,
that's really interesting. They actually usually record all of their stuff with everybody sitting down, but Mark had to get up and wave his arms around and everything, so they gave him like a special spot.
Yeah,
so hit it.
Arlene Sorkin was talking. She was the voice, among other things that she did the voice of Harley Quinn in the animated series. And she said the first time he did that, he got up and he walked around behind her. She almost jumped out of her seat, because they don't do that in a cold read. You sit down and you read it at the table. But Mark couldn't sit still.
And there are a lot of instances of the actors, when they're doing their voice acting, they get also video recorded as well, because a lot of that physicality, that presence that they're bringing, gets translated. Some of the ones that I'm thinking of, because I love behind the scenes stuff, I'm thinking of like Sinbad and the Seven Seas. They did a lot of the facial stuff and the body language that Brad Pitt and Catherine Zeta-Jones had. Another good set was John Cleese and Julie Andrews in Shrek as the king and queen of Far, Far Away. They filmed them together, and so not only were you able to pick up that verbal back and forth, but you were also to pick up how the gestures that they were using towards one another, which was really cool. So I do think that physicality plays a lot into what you're doing. I find it when I do voice acting based on different characters that I have different postures for different people.
Right.
So Cool. Well, it is that time where I go down the line and let everybody state where they can find your sites, and we're going to go ahead and start with Miss Emilie.
You can find me at www.circus13productions.com, and we have some exciting projects coming up, so stay tuned.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Mr. Roberts.
You can find my two shows. There is Press Start to Continue. That is starttocontinue.com. You can also go to civilpoliticsradio.com, and that's the civil politics show. And you can find me on Twitter at PressStartVFR.
And Mr. Ellis.
You can find me at paulkellis.com and at www.wirelessadventures.com. Also at Patreon/wirelessadventures.
Fantastic. And all of these links will be listed in the show notes if they are not already. You can find out more about Resonant Moon Audiobook Solutions at resonantmoon.com. You can find me on Twitter at LNicoleAudio. We also have a Facebook group where you can interact with other people who listen or participate in this show. I'm going to be posting a doodle poll for calling for submissions for short stories and for actors, because I have a stable of about 20 actors that I love and adore, but I also want to give the opportunity for people who have been thinking about voice acting to come and play with us. Come and lend your voice, and let's train you up a bit. If you would like, and that link is in the show notes. So is the link where you can get Stonebriar Casefiles Bad Alchemy. It is in paperback and in e-format, so if you want spoilers, that is the way to do that. This show is covered under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives, 4.0 International License, which means you can download it, you can share it, you can post it elsewhere. Just make sure you put a link back to this YouTube page and don't change it. It's perfect just the way it is, just like you. If you like what I'm doing, if you like cold reads enough, you can go ahead and click that subscribe button, and I will be extremely excited about that. Every new subscription, I get very excited. I squee to myself, and sometimes I make my housemates question my sanity, but that is okay. And I enjoy having people follow what we're doing, because I think it's a lot of fun. And I like having other voice actors come and play in this medium. So thanks again to all of my fantastic cast, and we will be back tomorrow, 8:30 Eastern Time, approximately, for part 2 of Chapter 16. And let's say goodnight, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.